All right, so you wanted us to do a deep dive into Kenny's world. And let me tell you, after going through all this stuff, character sketches, journal entries, stories about Kenny interacting with everybody, it's wild.
It's like someone was really trying to understand this guy.
Yeah, like we're solving a mystery here.
And it's a juicy one, right?
Okay.
Like we're not just getting the polished version of Kenny, the one he probably wants everyone to see.
Right. It's not just like Kenny's greatest hits.
Exactly. We're seeing the rough edges, the contradictions.
Which makes it way more interesting, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we find out he's an operations manager, so obviously organization is his thing, but he's not great at delegating.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That's one of those things that makes you lean in and go, okay, what's the story here?
Right. So, okay, picture the character profile describes Kenny as a 23-year-old operations manager, which already makes me feel like I'm 10 years behind in life. But anyway.
I know, right?
Then you see these key words: perfectionist, reliable. So far, so good, right?
Sounds like a dream employee, actually.
But then, bam, struggles with delegation. Like, come on, Kenny.
Yeah, that's the one that throws a wrench in the gears, right?
Uh,
Makes you wonder if this is a control thing.
oh, totally a control thing, right?
Right. Like how much of this is just Kenny needing everything to be just so?
And hold on, because it gets even better. This quote from Kenny's profile, I swear it's like the key to unlocking his brain. He says, and I quote, like, gears and perfect synchronization, adaptability, and structure drive the wheels of progress.
Whoa. That's quite the statement.
Right. It's not just a throwaway line. This is Kenny laying his worldview out for us.
Yeah. He's basically saying he sees the world as this perfectly calibrated machine.
And he's the one making sure all the gears mesh together.
Exactly. It's huge GE because it tells us his need for control isn't about power tripping. It's that he genuinely believes everything has its place. Like a universal order or something.
Almost like he's bringing order to the universe one perfectly placed gear at a time. Which, let's be honest, we've all tried to do at some point, right?
Oh, absolutely. Who hasn't looked at a messy room and thought, if I could just organize this one thing?
Right. But the question is, where's the line? When does a little order become, whoa, Kenny, maybe chill out a bit?
Right, exactly. Is it about making things run smoothly, or is it about needing to be the one calling all the shots?
And to really see that in action, we got to jump into the story about Addie and the infamous ball over the fence incident.
Yes. Classic Kenny, right. Rule follower to the max.
Because there's a no trespassing sign, and suddenly that's the law of the land.
Never mind that it's just a kid's ball. Rules are rules.
And Addie, bless her heart, she is not about to let a little fence stop her.
Nope, not one bit.
She's already halfway over before Kenny can even finish explaining why they shouldn't go back there.
It's that classic clash between someone who lives by the book.
And someone who says, what book?
Exactly.
And then you've got Bannock, right? This whole story about them building a bookshelf. And I have to say, Kenny's tone completely changes when he's dealing with Bannock.
Oh, yeah, because now it's not about some arbitrary rule. It's about his friend, his teammate.
Exactly. And remember, they're trying to build this massive bookshelf. And spoiler alert, it does not go according to plan.
Nope, things get a little tipsy.
But Kenny, he worked through it with Bannock. There's this patience, this willingness to problem solve together.
Which is super interesting because remember, Kenny's all about the plan, right? So to see him be so flexible, so forgiving when it's someone he's close to.
It definitely adds another layer to who Kenny is.
Oh, totally. Like his loyalty to Bannock trumps even his need to be right.
Which is kind of sweet when you think about it. But then...
Oh, here comes a but.
Yeah, because then we get this tiny interaction with Mac. It's just a quick one, but it's super revealing.
Okay, set the scene. What's happening?
So Kenny's place is spotless, right? Like, I'm talking a place for everything and everything in its place.
Sounds familiar.
And Mac walks in with muddy shoes, totally an accident.
Oh, no.
And you can practically see the steam coming out of Kenny's ears.
I'm like, is this just a neat freak thing?
Yeah.
Or is it something deeper?
Right. Because remember the gears quote?
Oh, it all comes back to the gears.
Right. And it makes me think maybe Kenny's need for order, it's not just about inanimate objects.
Right. It's about his environment, his relationships, like maybe even his own emotions.
Ooh, now that's getting deep.
Right. Like, does he need things to be neat and tidy so he can function, so he can feel in control?
And to really understand what's going on inside that organized mind of his, we got to go straight to the source, his journal entries.
Oh, yeah. The journals. These are where things get really good.
Right, because they're dated over several months.
Yeah.
It's like we're getting these little snapshots into how Kenny's mind works, you know?
Totally, like flipping through someone's personal diary and getting these glimpses of their hopes, their fears, their dreams.
Exactly. And we get to see how he views all sorts of things, like what does Kenny think about creativity, ambition?
Right. What makes Kenny tick?
Exactly.
And it's in those personal reflections that we really start to see the theme of order take on a whole new meaning.
Mm.
Like, remember that part in his creative entry?
Oh, yeah, where he talks about preferring those tried and true methods.
Exactly. He's all about efficiency. Why reinvent the wheel, right?
Right. He even compares himself to a librarian, carefully organizing information.
Which, let's be real, takes a certain kind of creativity in itself.
Totally. Knowing how to categorize, create systems, that's a skill.
Exactly. So it's like, is Kenny underselling himself here?
Maybe. He even says something like, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think we've already got a point where there's too much information. Which, okay, fair point, Kenny. It's a lot out there. But is he maybe limiting himself by being so focused on what's already been done?
It's like that saying, learn the rules so you can break them. Maybe Kenny needs a little more of that in his
A
life.
little less library, a little more Wild West, you know?
Exactly. Embrace the chaos a little.
And then there's this whole thing in his gratitude journal. He talks about how thankful he is to have a job with good work-life balance. And I was like, hold up, wait a minute. Is this the same Kenny we've been reading about?
Right. Because he always seems to be working, organizing on top of everything.
Right. Like, when does he have time to chill?
Okay, but here's where I think this ties back into Kenny's need for control. He can control his work, his schedule. So maybe that allows him to be more relaxed in other areas.
Interesting. So it's like he creates this little pocket of order in his work life so he can be more go with the flow in other areas.
Exactly. It's all about balance for Kenny.
Makes you wonder, though, what happens when things get really messy? Like, when emotions run high, can Kenny handle it?
Well, there's this one story that really throws a wrench in things.
Mm.
Remember the one with Kenny and his friend Tira?
Yeah.
They get into this whole discussion about taxes and things get a little tense.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Because Kenny's initial reaction is, no way, I shouldn't have to pay for things I don't directly benefit from.
Which, is a very Kenny thing to say. He even says something like, it's the idea that I'm forced to pay for things I don't directly benefit from.
And you can practically hear that need for control, battling with the idea that sometimes we have to contribute to a larger system, even if we don't always love it.
Right. Like, that's the thing about living in a society. It's not always going to be perfectly tailored to our individual needs.
Right. And to Kenny's credit, he does seem to get there. I mean, he listens to Tira. He actually considers her point of view.
He does. And he even says something like, I get that it's complicated and some level of taxation is necessary for social stability. Like, he's willing to acknowledge the bigger picture.
Which is huge for Kenny. So it's not that he's completely opposed to contributing or supporting things he might not directly use.
It's that he needs to feel like he has a say. Like, even within a system he can't fully control on his own, he still wants that sense of agency.
Which honestly is pretty relatable, right? We all want to feel like we have some control over our lives.
Totally. And for Kenny, it seems like that desire for control, it's not coming from a place of selfishness. It's coming from a need to make sense of the world, to feel secure in his place in it.
So it's less about me, and more about how do I make this whole crazy thing work?
Exactly. And I think that's a really important distinction to make. It's easy to write Kenny off as just being controlling or inflexible. But when we dig deeper, we see that his actions are often driven by a deeper need for understanding and security.
Which, I mean, who can't relate to that, right? So we've seen Kenny in action, right? We've gotten to peek inside his head a little with those journal entries and see how he interacts with the people around him.
And we've seen how even his desire for control isn't always about getting his own way.
Yeah.
It's often tied to this deeper need for understanding, for security.
Exactly. But the big question is there something that ties all of this together? Some kind of common thread that explains it all?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
We've been laying out all these puzzle pieces.
And I need to see the finished picture.
Right. Well, I think there a common thread here, something that underpins both Kenny's strengths and Dia's weaknesses.
Okay, you're killing me. What is it?
Trust. I think it all comes back to trust.
Trust. How so?
Think about it. Kenny trusts systems. He trusts proven methods. He trusts clearly defined expectations.
Okay, yeah. He's all about that if A, then B kind of thinking.
Exactly. He finds comfort in knowing what to expect, in having a plan.
Which makes total sense given his whole gears and perfect synchronization thing.
Right. And so where we see him struggle is when things or people are unpredictable, when there is no clear plan.
So it's less about being bossy and more about creating an environment where he feels safe, where he feels like he's not totally out of control?
Exactly. It's about minimizing uncertainty.
Hmm.
And when we look at it through that lens, certainly a lot of his actions make a lot more sense.
Right. The organization, the rule following, even the trouble delegating.
It's all about trying to maintain a sense of order, of predictability.
It makes you wonder, though, where does that need come from?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it just how he's wired? Or is it rooted in something deeper? Maybe something in his past.
Right, like some early experience that taught him that order equals safety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what? We may never know the answer to that.
Some mysteries are best left unsolved, I guess.
Right. But what we do know is that for Kenny, this need for trust, for predictability, it's a driving force in his life.
It shapes how he interacts with the world, how he makes decisions, how he builds relationships.
Exactly. And is what makes him such a fascinating character to unpack.
Totally. Because it reminds us that even the most seemingly straightforward personality traits,
Can have really complex origins and motivations.
right, we're all shaped by our experiences, our beliefs, our needs.
And often it's those contradictions, those tensions, that make us interesting, that make us who we are.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Kenny's world, I'm left with this thought. If you could give Kenny one piece of advice, just one, based on everything we've learned, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. But if I had to choose, I think I'd encourage him to explore the other side of trust a bit.
What do you mean by that?
Well, he's really good at trusting systems, processes, the external stuff. But what about trusting himself?
Oh, interesting. Like trusting his gut, his instincts.
Exactly. Trusting his ability to adapt, to handle the unexpected, to embrace a little chaos every now and then.
To loosen his grip just a little.
Exactly. Because you never know, sometimes a little chaos can lead to amazing things.
Right. Sometimes the best things in life happen when we least expect them.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance between order and chaos, holding on and letting go. And Kenny's journey, even though it's fictional, reminds us that we're all trying to figure out our own version of that dance.
That's so true. And that's the beauty of a deep dive like this. It's not about getting all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. Questions that make us think about our own WN lives, our choices, our own little contradictions.
So, as we say goodbye to Kenny, at least for now, we hope this conversation leaves you with some food for thought.
Think about it. What are your Kenny moments? Where do you find comfort in the familiar and the predictable? And where might a little trust in the unknown, a little willingness to let go, lead you to someplace unexpected?
Those are questions worth pondering.
They really are.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.